Hi everybody, welcome back, and if this is your first time, welcome. My name is Haddad, and today I'm going to talk as a layperson, not a doctor, about the potential that you may have been misdiagnosed by your psychiatrist. So, yeah, I said it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't have a college degree in general. So, am I just some idiot babbling on the internet? Halfway. I have a ton of experience with going to psychologists, going to psychiatrists, going to psych wards. I'm an addict in recovery. I've been diagnosed with bipolar, but before I was diagnosed with bipolar and properly treated for it, I was diagnosed with all sorts of stuff by general practitioners before I had a dedicated psychiatrist, or at least my first dedicated psychiatrist, and then eventually, by specialists. And it's not their fault. At least it's not all their fault. This is not a video to incriminate people in, that profession. I think maybe I'm going to say a couple things that sound like I just hate them, but that's really not the case. I think doctors are in a difficult position because, for the most part, they have to take our word on stuff. They can, but it may not always be tactful to be like, well, I hear what you're saying, but you're lying, or at least you're misguided. So let me tell you what's going on in your life. They can't really do that. So when I went in to my general practitioner, what had been my family doctor for my whole childhood, and then I was, 15, 16, 17, whatever I was, and told him, I'm depressed. I'm sad all the time. I'm anxious. I can't go to school. I'm, using drugs more and more, and I feel out of control. I don't know what to do. And I probably asked my parents to stay out of the room as well. So there wasn't even that authority that, my guardian, an older person with more perspective and probably a healthier perspective, to tell him that, hey, it may not be as simple as Max is saying. So the doctor did what he could do, which is he started me on a train of antidepressants. I'm not antidepressant either, but the information I was giving him was only accurate to a point, and I wasn't even intentionally lying. And I don't even know if it really counts as lying. Basically, I was saying to him, here's how I feel because my life is a mess. But what I had convinced myself of, and how I had told him, was that my life was a mess because of how I felt. And it turned out many years later, 15 years later or so, when I finally was diagnosed appropriately and got sober and my life is much better, that it wasn't how I felt that was ruining my life. It was the quality of my life, and that my life was ruined, that was screwing up how I felt. And that may not be your case, but I think it's difficult but important to go to a doctor with an open mind and say, here are the facts, but not give them a narrative. Don't paint the picture, because what are they going to do other than adhere to the narrative that you've created? And I think a lot of times we create that narrative because it's comforting. It's helpful to try to pinpoint and name what's wrong with us and why it's wrong. But it's not always accurate. It's not always right, because our brain wants to protect us, even from itself, and it can put things in boxes that are just the wrong packages for it to be put in. I hope any of that metaphor makes sense. So maybe you've been misdiagnosed, partly because your doctor is too scared for liability reasons to say, maybe what you're telling me isn't true, and partly because you've gone in and told them things that are not exactly accurate. The danger is we end up diagnosed for major depressive disorder, let's say, and you're really, really anxious. You're really depressed. You're having trouble enjoying things that you would normally enjoy. You're feeling tired, and it's because all of your time is spent being anxious, being worried, being concerned with stuff that you may not even have control over. So yeah, it's exhausting. and you don't have any energy left to enjoy even the simple things that you would normally take part in, because all of your stamina is being spent on your brain spinning out of control. And you go in and you tell them that you're sad, you can't enjoy anything, and they medicate you with something that is primarily used to treat depression. But the problem isn't the depression. The depression is actually a symptom of what's really going on, your anxiety. And it might not even be biological anxiety. It could be that that job that you're worried about, that you get scared to go into, isn't the right job for you. I'm also not a career advisor, so please don't hear me saying quit your job. Max Haddad knows best. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes problems that are upsetting to us, that are causing anxiety, are upsetting because they're actual problems, not because our brains are broken. I think it's easy and I'll speak as an American and our culture today to think that if we're upset about something, it's our fault, not the thing's fault. And it is important not to just point the finger outwards all the time and say that's wrong and that's wrong and that's wrong, but I'm right. But I think it's also important to recognize too how strong you are as a human, and how many hundreds of thousands of years, if not more than that, that your brain has been developing to do what is best for you. It misfires for sure in 2021 sometimes, but sometimes those feelings you have about a person, you know, you're dating somebody and it's just not quite right, but I should be excited about being with this new person. Or like I said, the job, you go in and it's just, God, I don't like, my boss makes me really uncomfortable, and this work just makes me anxious. I feel like I'm being immoral or something. I don't want to sell these things to a person because I don't like the product, whatever. It's not your fault. Those are real problems. Your boss is a prick. You don't believe in the product that you're selling. The person you're dating is hiding something from you. I'm not telling you to go and tell your boss to shove it and tell your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, that they're, accuse them. But it's okay to trust yourself too. And I think when it comes to being misdiagnosed, what the video is about is when I was able to go into the doctor's office, a psychiatrist, and say, here's what's going on, and I don't know why. And then the doctor painted a picture for me, created a narrative for me. And I advocated for myself. I said, doctor, I appreciate that, but no, that's not true. My life is screwed up. I've been in active addiction basically for 13 years. I feel useless because I'm at least a decade behind all my peers. I'm in a relationship that's not right. I don't have a job. I'm completely dependent on my parents, and I don't need help feeling good about that. I don't want to feel good about that. I want to fix that. I need help fixing that, because I'm not going to be happy until that stuff is taken care of. So 80% of the responsibility is on me. But I truly felt that I was in a position where my mood was so inconsistent that I couldn't address those problems consistently enough to fix them. And that's when I was diagnosed with bipolar. I had had psychologists and psychiatrists hint at it in the past. Well, maybe you're bipolar, but we don't want to, we don't want to treat you for that, because that's worse than treating you for just, a little bit of teenage depression or something. And I don't know if they were scared or what, but when I finally was able to tell a psychiatrist, listen, what I've done in the past is not working and I need real help to solve these real problems in my life, then I was finally able to be diagnosed correctly. And it's a difficult, wire to tiptoe across or whatever, because I had to go in without a narrative, but I also had to go in willing to be flexible. And if the doctor created a narrative for me, I had to say no if it wasn't correct. So much of me being misdiagnosed in my past was not knowing how to advocate for myself, not knowing how to say to someone with so much more experience in schooling than me, you're wrong. I felt like I couldn't say that. How can I say that to them? This is what they do day in and day out. And before they did it day in and day out, they went to college for 12 years to study this. But the truth is, I knew myself better than anybody else could. I'm not saying I was the most self-aware or introspective or whatever, but I had lived my life and nobody else had. That's an obvious statement, but what I'm saying is you know yourself better than anybody else too. And if the diagnosis of depression doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. I know it can be confusing when your brain is working against you, if you're actually depressed, if you're actually anxious or whatever. But maybe that's not the right diagnosis. And maybe it's anxiety. Maybe anxiety is not the right diagnosis. Maybe you've got compulsions that aren't typically a part of what you've been diagnosed with. It's important to address those things. So I'll end with this. I'm already rambling and I don't even know how useful it is, but I had to have a consistent emotional equilibrium before I could really tackle the things in my life that were making me miserable outside of that biological issue. And I had to get sober before I really even knew what I should feel like. Because when I was using drugs, there's the come up and the come down. I don't have to explain any of that to you guys. You get it. And so I was screwing with my brain. Of course I was miserable. I was, high for 2 weeks and now I'm not. Yeah, you're sad. Duh. So there were a lot of things that I was responsible for. But I think the most important things that I did were get sober. If that's your problem, I know it's not as easy as like, oh, I'll just get sober now, but that's what I had to do. And I had to advocate for myself to finally get to the right diagnosis. After 6, 7, 8 or more doctors were unwilling to diagnose me with what I actually have, when I began to advocate for myself and say, no, I've tried this before, I'm not trying this same medicine again, then I was able to get to the root of the problem. And my life has been a lot better, a lot healthier, and a lot more consistently okay without chaos for years. And that's been a huge blessing. And I don't use that word lightly because I'm not religious and I'm not very spiritual, but it's been a blessing. So take care of yourselves. I hope if you're in a position where you feel like you need to get help from a professional, that you're able to share authentically and stand up for yourself so you don't have to struggle with something that is not actually wrong with you. Take care. Bye.